Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. I read it in 2020. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. But that rating is definitely not how I feel about Ryan, because I've connected with a lot of his work in other ways too. But it's worth talking through, and it feels even more relevant today in 2025 than when I read it in 2020. So here's the review. It's kind of a novelty book of affirmations woven through historical anecdotes masquerading as self-help. It belongs more on the coffee table than the bookshelf. I was super looking forward to something that examined ego and how it is mistakenly valued in society, corrupting people to ruin. Unfortunately, this book takes the perspective that all ego is ruin. And maybe I should have guessed that by the title. The problem with so many of the stories is that the majority of the people Holiday quotes to represent the evils of ego are massive, successful historical figures, while the few that he describes thriving in humility are far lesser known people who, even in their stories, are taken advantage of by their colleagues and foes tapped into their own personal ego. He talks about the downfall of Jobs, Steve Jobs, and Hearst, William Randolph Hearst, and others, without acknowledging the key role ego played in their success. Because of the subjects of the stories, the dialogue needs to be more balanced for credibility's sake. And in addition, a book about the perils of ego needs to be less judgmental. Judgment itself stems from ego. Also, Holiday tends to get tripped around his absolute advice with floating inferences that don't always seem to connect. For example, here's a quote: "Most recovery is temporary, unless you make it not so. Recovery is not grand, it's one step in front of the other, unless your cure is more of the disease." You probably feel like you need more context after reading that. I felt like that too, quite a bit. The book is loaded with this type of aimless advice. Most of it didn't connect for me. Some of it did, and that's the only thing making this 2 stars instead of 1. Pick this up if you're looking for a relatively shallow, one-sided pick-me-up. So I mentioned that I'm a fan of Ryan Holiday. I read this book. This is the only book I've read by him. I think probably my feelings about this book have kept me away from reading some of his other books, but I've participated in some of his interactive initiatives online. He has done a lot of work studying the Stoics and their views on life, and I really appreciate everything he has in there. This book really didn't work for me though. And I think I was, at this time, in 2020, I was really looking for an indictment of ego. But as I was reading, it seemed like all the people with massive success really were the heavily egoed people. And the people who were shunning ego were suffering. And that was really hard for me to handle in 2020. When I think about its relevance to me here in 2025, more so than in 2020, I think about the fact that I am trying to get beyond ego and get to something that is more universal and more connective to community, to people. And I think that the message here, and this book as an attempt at trying to distance oneself from ego, shows that our attachments are still there. And when I consider this now in 2025, doing this video, I think about it as some of the difficulty in myself to get beyond the ego and to really pursue ego death in order to get to a more spiritual place. I think I'm still attached to a lot of the things that ego creates in everyday life. I was doing a thought experiment when I was thinking about doing this video and putting this out here, and I was like, oh, because I'm very now comfortable, with ego being the enemy, maybe I'll just roll out of bed and not shave and not shower and not get ready and just do the video on screen as proof to be where I am in terms of letting go of ego. But then I got into a thought process thinking about the judgment of that and what does that mean and what would people think and would people worry about me? And it's ego that pushes those thoughts on us. So I still agree. I think ego is the enemy. I'm looking for a more complete send-up of ego so that I can commit fully and let it go. One of the things I've been thinking about lately, one of the sort of mantras that have been coming through my work spiritually and emotionally and mentally, is the concept that all negative emotion, including judgment, including anxiety, including fear, including lack, depression, are a commitment to separateness. Think about it. If you're upset because you're missing something in your life, or if you're afraid of something that may happen or something that is other than you, that it really is a commitment to saying that I am stuck, separate from everyone else. And that's not what I'm trying to reinforce in my life. I'm trying to reinforce connection. I'm trying to reinforce a coming together, I'm trying to reinforce unity. And so, in a very sort of tangible, commonsensical way, letting go of judgment, letting go of fear, letting go of ego is the way, in my mind, to evolve towards a more loving, understanding, and complete experience. That's where I'm pushing. And this book didn't do it for me, but it feels like thinking about reading it in 2020, talking about it here in 2025, and thinking about Ryan Holiday's journey with all of his books. He's got a ton of great books that are philosophical in nature, and then moving towards this concept of the Daily Stoic. I totally encourage you to check it out. His ideas, his practices, his community for Stoicism is a very positive influence. It was a positive influence for me too, in the middle of all this. It all feels like part of the journey. And so while I don't recommend this book, I definitely recommend Ryan Holiday. I definitely recommend the work he's done. Browse his titles. Maybe take a look at something and see if it connects with you. This one connected for me at the time, at the place I was on my journey. It is probably the perfect negative review to represent that space in the journey to where I am now. I read Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday in 2020. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. And I'm still working on getting past that ego.